Hello and welcome to Citi Sports. My name is Bernardo Say, and I am here to talk to a Ghanaian who is very special. He's a rower. Yeah, rower. I mean, not many people know about that sport. So today I'm going to delve deep into the sport and why that sport, why did he decide to venture into that sport, and how that sport can be developed. And we are not only going to talk about rowing, we're going to talk about many other sports as well. So I hope you stick and stay with me and enjoy this interview as much as I hope I will do too. Thank you. Who is Jon Boafo?
That's a very good question. I think that even at my age, I don't even know exactly who Jon Boafo is. No, but on a more serious note, I am a sports and marketing consultant. So I specialize in helping big brands, marketing brands, basically adapt themselves to the local context. So if you're an international brand, you're coming into a country, I help you adapt the way that you talk and your narrative to be able to fit a local context. So that's on the professional side. And then more on the leisurely side, I guess. I am Ghana's #1 international rower. So I participated in 2013, so that's 10 years ago now, in the World Cup in Australia, in Sydney, Australia.
You are a big man. You are a big man. Before we talk about the sports, rowing, and why you decided to venture into rowing, how has life been for you? Because a bird just told me you don't even live in the country. So where have you been? Where do you live? What do you do aside from what the professional stuff you just mentioned?
Yeah, so it's probably an international bird then. I live in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. I've been there for the last 5 years, so since 2018, I've been living there. And then, I've been there for good, so I keep coming in and out of Ghana. And, I'm enjoying my life over there, but I also miss Ghana from time to time, so I come and visit my family, come and visit friends like you as well, and, enjoy time in Ghana as well.
How is it like living in Ivory Coast? I mean, I know they are going to host the next Africa Cup of Nations. Why should a Ghanaian say, okay, Ghana will be in Ivory Coast, so or hopefully will be in Ivory Coast, so why should I buy a ticket and come watch the Black Stars play in the Ivory Coast? Should they qualify?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Should they qualify? Right now, we're hoping that they'll be able to pull it off in the next match or the last match that they have to be able to qualify to be at the AFCON next year. All us Ghanaians that live in Cote d'Ivoire are rooting for the Black Stars, for all the players, so they can do well and perform so they can make it to the AFCON next year. Why should someone come to Cote d'Ivoire? Well, a lot of Ghanaians haven't actually been to Cote d'Ivoire, and Cote d'Ivoire is literally our neighbor to the west. And we're a country that's surrounded by francophone countries, and you find that most Ghanaians, the only place they've been to is Togo. But Cote d'Ivoire has a lot to offer. Similarly to when we hosted the AFCON in Ghana, in 2008, a lot of Ivorians came here, so we need to also make the effort to go and support the team. And I'd even say that regardless of whether or not the Black Star make it there, I think it's a celebration of football. So it's important that we're able to come and experience it, and to be able to also get inspired and see what the other teams are doing, what other countries are doing. Cote d'Ivoire is a very beautiful country. You'll come and you'll be amazed by some of the different landscapes that are there. There are beaches that are similar to the ones in Ghana, but different at the same time. Beautiful beaches, beautiful resorts that you'll be able to enjoy. And then everyone loves acheke, so you should definitely come to Abidjan to check some of that.
Okay. I mean, the mascot for the Africa Cup of Nations is called Aquaba.
Yeah.
That when it was released, a lot of people saying, is it the Ghana Aquaba, or what Aquaba is that? So you live in Ivory Coast, you understand what Aquaba means in Ivory Coast. What does Aquaba mean in Ivory Coast?
So it's the same thing as in Ghana. The only difference is that the Aquaba there doesn't have two A's, so it's just only one A. And it means the same thing. It means the same thing. So when you get out of the airport in Abidjan, when you land, you kind of get out of the airport. There's a huge roundabout there, which is called roundabout. It's called Akwaba. So it's within the culture. And at the end of the day, we're very, very similar. The people who live on the border and even the Ivorians on that side of the border are very similar to Ghanaians. There are families that have people from both sides. So case in point, my wife's dad grew up basically close to the border, so he knew, they used to cross sometimes to Ghana and come the other side. So they were very close, and that's why I was saying, in the case Ghana doesn't make it we still need to come, because you're supporting your brother, brothers and sisters on the other side of the border, because we're all basically brothers and sisters at the end of the day.
I see. That's quite fascinating. Initially, I thought Akwaba in Ivory Coast meant something else, but now you've given deeper insight as to when you get to the airport, just across, you see. Wow, that's cool. Now, let's just take a detour from football related to why rowing. I mean, I checked out your profile, and I'm like, what would push a Ghanaian to say I want to do rowing? I mean, no disrespect, and I'm not saying this with prejudice or anything of that nature, but why would you choose rowing? Because there's football, there's tennis, there's basketball. I mean, you have the height to even play a basketball. Why rowing?
So that's a really, really good question. Growing up, I played a lot of sports. So at the time, I grew up in France. That's why I speak some French, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm also living in Abidjan right now. And after trying various sports, my best friend at the time invited me to do some rowing. So the context is his father was able to row at a very high level and got a scholarship to study in the States rowing. So he invited me, him and his sister were part of the team, and immediately I loved it. I loved the camaraderie that you can have in a rowing boat. So you can be up to 9 in a boat. So 8 people sitting rowing, and then what they call a coxswain or cox, someone who is actually steering the boat as well. And so I love the camaraderie. We mainly trained in either 4s or 8s, and they basically become like your family. And rowing is one of those sports where everyone has to be in perfect sync or things are messed up. You have to be able to, push off and pull at the same time. Otherwise, it just slows down the boat, and it's not an efficient thing. So it was discovering the sport, my love also for being on the water. There's nothing like early morning, you're on the water, and it's very serene, you're very calm. And it's also a hard sport, so you spend a lot of time training, be it in the lifting, you're lifting weights, or you're on the water, or you're on the rowing machine. You spend a lot of times also in the gym rowing, in the rowing machine with the people around you, so you get close to them, and then there's a love that gets developed in the sport. But I understand though, because it's not a sport that is popular in Ghana. In Ghana we tend to focus on football, and then a lot of the other sports get left on the wayside. But there are other sports, and I encourage each and everyone to look at sports, because you might not be the next, Michael Essien, but you could be the next rowing star or something.
The person could be the next Jon Boafo.
Yeah, possibly.
Paint a picture in the minds of our viewers what exactly rowing is, because you mentioned the training 4s, it's an 8, but try to paint a vivid picture as to what the sport is about.
Okay, so in a nutshell, the sport is rowers in a boat. So rowers can be in a boat in a variety of setups. So you can be alone in a one-man boat that they call a skiff. So in a skiff, what ends up happening is you have 2 oars which are attached to the sides of the boat, and you have what you're sitting on is basically like something that slides. So when you're sliding on it, you basically extend and then you pull. So kind of like those rowing machines that you see in the gyms. Is the same kind of movement, other than instead of staying in a lateral movement, your hands basically kind of go out to the boat and come out. So that's in a skiff. And then the other thing about rowing is you can also have only one oar. Okay, so when you have two oars, it's called sculling, and you can also have one oar. So if you have one oar, there's one person who's pulling on one side and the person is pulling the other side, and so then it goes by pairs, 2, 4, and then 8. So that's basically roughly it. But I encourage the Ghanaians next year with the Paris 2024 Olympics to look at other sports. Rowing will be there as well. And one of my good friends from Benin actually is trying to qualify to go to the to Olympics next year. So they should watch and see the kinds of things that we're able to perform as Africans in rowing.
Are you willing to say, okay, my family's in Abidjan, but I want to develop the sport in Ghana. I want people to have that passion to become rowers, because again, in my mind, it's so far. I can't connect with it. You know.
Yeah.
So are you willing to come down to Ghana and say, you know what, I want to come down here so that people can connect with me, and through connecting with me, they will be able to connect to the water, and then from the water, then they can pick a skiff and we start rowing together.
Listen, I think there needs to be some prerequisites for that to be able to happen. One of the reasons why rowing is not a worldwide popular sport is because it's a sport that is expensive. The basic boats are quite expensive, and then let's not talk about the very performance boats which goes into the tens of thousands of dollars. So that's one of the issues that we have. Now, the World Rowing Federation, which is known as FISA, donated some boats to Ghana some time ago, about 10 years ago or so. Unfortunately, they were given on a regional basis and they ended up in Togo. And unfortunately, we weren't able to bring them back into Ghana. And I think that's something that's really important. If without the equipment, we won't be able to grow the sport in the country. So, for example, in Abidjan, there is a place called Solbeni, which is near a lagoon. So for those who have never been to Abidjan, there's a huge lagoon which basically splits the city into two. And on there, I've trained sometimes, but there trains also the national champion who is currently in the States of Ivory Coast, who's currently in the States trying to qualify also for the Olympics next year. So they have the boats over there. They have about 3 or 4 boats that I've been able to use while I'm there. And without the equipment, without the boats, without the oars, without also the technical staff that is there, it'll be difficult for me to decide to move from Abidjan and then move back here to help. In as much as I would like to promote the sport as much as I can, it'll be difficult without those prerequisites to be able to move back, spend time with the federation. And I'm in touch with the federation. They were of great help when I was more active in the rowing sport, but there's some prerequisites, there's some limitations that we currently face that make it difficult for us to be able to develop a sport in Ghana.
Wow. Talk to me a bit about when you were active as a rower. When you first found out you were going to compete at the international scene, how was the feeling like for you? I mean, how was the feeling like for you to see the Italians, the French boys, the Brits, the Germans? How difficult and how was the feeling for you competing among these elite athletes?
So at the beginning, you're kind of nervous, but like anything else, you're nervous before doing a TV show. You're nervous before getting on the stage. You're nervous before you do something that is new. It's a new stage. I've competed in the national championships in France. I'd competed also at the collegiate level at university in the United States. But this was another top-notch level of people that you saw, you follow maybe on Facebook, that you saw promoted and featured also by FISA, the World Rowing Organization. So getting there, it was it was a bit nerve-wracking at the beginning, but then you quickly realize that all these people actually are cool. One way or another is basically kind of like a brotherhood in the sense. So people are willing to help you. I remember running to one of the coaches of the French national team, and so he was in touch or in charge, sorry, of a double, so a boat with two people, and he helped me out. He was giving me tips about certain things about nutrition. He was talking about some of the weightlifting that I should do. So at the end of the day, it was great because I was able to also meet some rowers from the female U.S. national team who ended up winning the Olympics in 2016 after that, and we keep in touch. But it was great to be in their presence and to see the potential that we could have on that great stage if we're able to get those prerequisites like I mentioned earlier.
Is it not an elitish sport? Like it's a sport for the rich, because in Ghana, when we say somebody's a swimmer, not many people have swimming pools in their home. So automatically it goes like, for the rich kids. The poorer kids, they use the sea. I mean, and it's not the same experience basically. Isn't it the same with rowing? Is it not for the elite?
So one would think so, but the truth is you can still initiate people who are comfortable being on the water, who are used to, I don't know, canoeing, etc. So I'll give you an example, which is not exactly rowing, but in canoeing. So recently, on the platforms of the Olympics, they featured a canoer from Nigeria. So she didn't come from any elite type level, but the kinds of boats that they use as well are quite expensive. They're carbon fiber, they're really good, they're at the top of the level. And she didn't come for the most richest of families, but she was initiated to the sport and she fell in love with the sport and dedicated her life to the sport until she was able to make it at the Olympics. So if I'm able to make it with you next year to Paris for the Olympics, we'll definitely be rooting for her if she's able to qualify. But that's the point. The point is that maybe people think that it's an elitist sport, but like swimming, if you're able to be initiated to the sport and you have a certain kind of talent and you're well coached, you never know. The sky is the limit at the end of the day.
We are still in the aspect of rowing. How is the whole fraternity like? I mean, when you are in there, you mentioned that it helps with the bonding. You have teammates you compete with, you have teammates you train with and all of that. But how exactly is it like being part of the federation? Is there special incentives that, okay, after every competition you get this kind of gear, or if you're able to compete at this level, you are supposed to give back a certain amount to the community to help build that interest? Because I feel like on the global scene, it's still not a popular sport, even among the Europeans.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a very popular sport if you look at it on the scale of other sports like basketball or even football or even tennis, to that matter. It's definitely one of the sports that is, I would say, for lack of a better word, a secondary sport in terms of all the sports in the world. So there is definitely a good fraternity, and I think that's probably one of the things that pushes all the rowers to be close. So I'll give you an example of this. When I moved to Ghana in 2012, back to Ghana in 2012, with the aim of making it to this 2016 Olympics, quickly I was able to meet people who were former rowers, people who were connected with the rowing, and there's not in Ghana, and so there was not that many of us. We were maybe 4 or 5, and also people who were perhaps expats who moved to Ghana who had heard about my story, and we were able to connect through the rowing and our experiences in rowing. So I'm hoping that once we're able to get the right kinds of equipment to come into Ghana, that we'll be able to grow the sport and see what we're able to achieve. Like I was speaking about earlier, my friend's father was able to get a scholarship to row in the US. The possibilities in a lot of sports, we shouldn't only be focusing on football. There are other possibilities with other sports to be able to get scholarships to also excel. From the top of my head, I don't know, except in England, many professional rowers who do that on a full-time basis and who are able to make some good money from it. So I was talking earlier about the French national team. What ends up happening with the French national team is a lot of them will work for national bodies, or companies that are related to national bodies, so the equivalent of the ECG, etc. Knowing that they might be here for about 8 weeks training, they have a special work schedule, and then they might have to go and camp for 8 weeks because they have a big competition. So in that sense, the government is also involved in helping and ensuring that their athletes are able to compete at a good level, so make some money so they can be able to sustain themselves. They're not going to be as rich as, some of these guys who just moved to Saudi Arabia, but they'll be able to take care of their families and live from their passion of rowing.
In Ghana, right? Where would you think it would be ideal to say, okay, we can row here? Because in my head, I'm guessing there should be a running water body. It shouldn't be on the sea. So in Ghana, ideally, where would you think, okay, we have all these equipments, expensive equipment, I must say. We have all of that set up. Now we want to train at the highest level. Where would we start from?
So in rowing, there are two types of rowing. I didn't do this, but there's one type of rowing which is open sea water rowing. So you can actually row on the sea. So that's one of the possibilities. But ideally, if I were to continue rowing, you would do it on the Volta Lake or the Volta River. So near Akosombo. That place would be a fantastic place to be able to do it. You can go from Adome Bridge, and usually we do long distances. We can do 20 kilometers one way or 10 kilometers one way and then come back, etc. So that would definitely be an ideal place because there is not too much of a current that it pulls you, or it's too hard to, once you go down the river, come back. And the place is serene. I don't know if you spent a lot of time there, but it's serene, and it's an ideal place for us to create a center over there.
Let's jump quickly back to other sports, because you are not just you are a national hero, you're a national champion, but again, your life now has moved away from not too much into rowing, but you're more into other sports and activities. Let me put football aside. Let's say I'm an investor and I live in the UK and I want to invest in sports. Where would you tell me to invest my money in?
In Ghana. So I have one of my really, really good friends who is involved in real estate. And we had a discussion about this just the other day, and he was talking about the potential of people doing tennis in Ghana. So if you look at the tennis men and women of this world, the amount of money that they're able to make at the highest level is just, is mind-blowing. So if you look at the Forbes top athletes, the amount of money that they're able to make on the female side, almost all of them are tennis players. Right, so you think about Naomi Osaka. You look at Serena Williams when she was active, and even now, the amount of money that they're able to generate from tennis. So, if I were to have the investment kind of money, I think that I would probably focus that mainly on tennis. Since football is out of it, I would go for tennis. Yeah.
So now you say tennis, but how developed do you think other sports and disciplines are? And I'm asking this because you just came from Afro Sports Summit. You listen to all the commentaries, how not connected the various sporting disciplines are. It looks like every sporting fraternity wants to be an island, but it can't work like that, right? When you don't live in this country, but you still have an eye on Ghana. When you look at our sporting landscape, and I'm trying to cut off football because football is like football, how less developed are we, or how far back are we when it comes to sports in general, minus football?
I think we're not too far off. I think what we need a couple of things. The first thing that we need is to have proper infrastructures. So yesterday at the Afro Sports Summit, I believe it was the president of GOC was talking about athleticism, athletics. Sorry, and in athletics, we need to ensure that we have the tracks for our guys to be able to train. So once we have the right kinds of tracks, we also need to invest in our coaches, give them the right kinds of tools and give them the right kinds of experiences to get them to be able to help our athletes perform at the top level. Just before this, I singled out tennis, but there are so many other sports that have a huge potential in Ghana. One of my friends has a boxing academy where they mix boxing and education. It's called Besasaka. They're based in Jamestown. Initiatives like that need to be pushed out. They need to we need to change from a mindset of you need millions and millions to be able to start something. We need to start small and then see how it grows. And it's only by starting small, telling the right kinds of stories that we'll be able to also attract the kinds of investors who will be willing to help us grow at a bigger pace as well. And then if you look at other countries around Africa, if you look specifically at East Africa, the Kenyas or the Ugandas, they started from somewhere. Let me even give you another example, which is not from Africa, but from Jamaica. In Jamaica, almost everyone runs at the middle school level, the SHS level as well. They're able to run. And then basically from there, they take the best of the best and they put them in the SHS together and they compete. And then they'll be able to go higher and higher and higher. We need to really think about a holistic plan and strategies to develop our sports, and give also a spotlight to some of the smaller sports that were able to also give us some medals at the Olympics. I think it's high time that we're able to focus on individual sports in Ghana. What about ping pong? What are we looking at? The tennis, swimmers. All these guys are the guys who, at the end of the day, are able to also qualify for the Olympics. And we need to push them, we need to support them, we need to ensure that their stories are told so that they can also go out there and perform and also make us all very proud.
So you think it's time to say football, take a back bench for now? Now it's time to push other sporting activities?
I don't think that both are mutually exclusive. I think that for the longest time, football really has basically taken almost 100% of the spotlight. I think that in the strategies that we put in place, we need to also give some spotlight to some of the other sports. Why have we not heard more about boxing and the boxing initiatives that have been taking place? Why have things not been grown since we won a medal at the last Olympics? These are the kinds of things that we need to think of, and I'm sure that the people at the top level, Professor, the president of the GOC, is trying to push for that, but we all need to come to the table and collaborate so we're able to push these conversations further.
Right after the Africa Cup of Nations, which is football, that's going to happen like January, February. Right afterwards, there's the Africa Games, which is going to happen here in Accra. And the African Games, I know it's not too fixated on football. It's more of the other athletics, swimming, and all of that. All of that. Do you think that the Africa Games should be the fundamental block to say, okay, we are done with this. Now we should push harder to develop other sports and activities?
So it definitely has the potential to for us to use that as an impetus to push further for other sports. So let me give you an example. When I was still in Ghana, I was the director of operations for the Ghana Triathlon Federation, and we used the facilities that are now going to be upgraded at the University of Legon. With the upgraded facilities that are going to help welcome the All African Games next year, we should be able to promote other sports. We should be able to use that place as a sort of hub to grow other sports. How do we train our swimmers from a young age, but also some of our university students as well? Why don't we encourage them to discover other sports? Because at the end of the day, not everyone is going to be a high performance athlete. At the end of the day, we all need to also find our level at the end of the day. But we can't all be top footballers. Why not find something that you can be good at, another sport? It could be running marathons, it could be sprinting, it could be biking, it could be anything. But we also need to be open-minded and also look out for other opportunities there are to develop some of our talents in other sports as well.
Tell me your biggest sports cultural shock when you came back to Ghana. I mean, you travel a lot. Last I saw you were in Paris. Then was it in Lagos or something?
Yeah, it was in Lagos.
That, like very recently. So you do see sports up close and personal with other countries, right? What's the biggest sporting cultural shock you've had when you came to Ghana?
I'm not sure it's not really a cultural shock, but something that I guess I was disappointed in, and I've seen this several times, is the quality of the pitches that some of our national teams end up playing on. I think that at the end of the day, if you want our athletes to perform at the highest levels, we need to have the prerequisites in place. We need to ensure that the stadiums that they're playing at have good pitches, that the facilities there have good pitches, the facilities are also top notch. That when we renovate some of these stadiums for the AFCONs, the All African Games, etc., that we're able to maintain them so that every time that our national athletes come and perform in these arenas, that they're able to perform and do so well comfortably. So that's something that I would urge the authorities to focus on, to ensure that that our athletes, our Black Stars who are trying to qualify for the AFCON next year, that they are put in the best kinds of conditions so they'll be able to perform. This other point that I wanted to bring up has been somewhat changed since I left Ghana in 2018. But at a certain point, when the Black Stars would play, no one would be in the stadiums. At a certain point, when the Black Meteors would play, no one would be at the stadium. Sometimes Black Stars would play, and it's just me and my mother watching the game, and it's not good. We need to be able to support our teams irregardless of that, and it's by supporting them that we'll be able to get the right kinds of sponsors, the right kinds of marketing agencies, that we can be able to collaborate, the right kind of content around the team, and that's how we'll be able to push it. So I would recommend each and every one to go to the stadiums, especially when the national teams are playing, be it the female national teams, the male national teams, and in various sports as well. Support them. That's how we grow our sports as well.
In terms of growing the sports, I mean, again, I'm going to bring you back to the Afro Sports Summit. One thing that stuck with me when I spoke to Ben Nunu Mensah was how we package our product when it comes to packaging our product. So let me give you an example. In Ghana, or Ghana globally, when it comes to football talents, We have tons of them. A lot of them travel outside the country, but it's just 1 out of 1 billion that really become national stars. Unlike Brazil, where in a year they transfer a lot of players too, but they have a way to market these players. Before Angelo Santos joined Chelsea, everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew there was enough data on him. Before Matthias, these players, there's data to back it. So when we come down to our country, what do you think we can do right to package these talented footballers, sprinters? Because these are products that it can be a higher end exports for the country as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think that what's really important is we need to put in place systems that can support that. Listen, you're talking about Brazil, but Brazil has stadiums that are full every day. People come to see Santos, trying to look for the next Neymar, trying to look for the next Pelé. And so there's a culture of football there. You go to villages in the middle of nowhere and people are playing football in Brazil. And I think that we need to support the grassroots level of football and in sports in Ghana. I'm sure that the GFA and the authorities are already currently working on that, but we need to ensure that we do more. So that's on the grassroots level. At the professional level, one of the things that we really need to push for more is analytics. Nowadays you should be able to say, this player run 10.2 kilometers. He did these number of sprints. I was talking to a founder. His name is Mohammed. He's a founder of Cora Sports. He was showing me the kinds of things that his software is able to do these days. They're able to show the kinds of passes each individual player has. He was showing me a clip from the current World Cup, Women's World Cup, of the Jamaica against France match. And he was showing me on one of the players the number of passes that she made, the number of positive passes that she made. All these kinds of data is things that we need to be able to put in place in some of our local clubs. Because with that kind of data, then you're able to then go and talk to the scouts, talk to the various agents in the European clubs, or even, nowadays Saudi Arabia is the top destination, and to be able to sell them before they've been able to see the player that, listen, these are the kinds of performances that my player is able to have, and then give them the right kinds of clips, and then before they're able to come and travel and see the player, and then they might be interested or they might not be interested. So it really is an ecosystem that we need to build, which is around, like I said earlier, promoting the grassroots football, and then also building an ecosystem around analytics and pushing that through as well, so that people know the performance is one of the most important things, and the kinds of performance that because you have the data there to back and to back the kinds of recommendations that you have as a coach as well.
In a nutshell, just tell me, because you're talking about data, a lot of data, forward passes, positive passes. Sports has grown so much from raw talent, because I feel like when I was younger, you could be talented and just move, but now even the Europeans they are talented and they are still physical, and so they bring in data to make their works a lot more attractive, more packageable. In this dispensation, this era we live in as Ghanaians, how important is it that we say it's time to use science to drive the business aspects of football?
That's a very good question. At the Afro Sports Summit, like we were talking about earlier, one of the things that we talked about is ensuring that the back room staff is competent, to have the right kinds of physios, having the right kinds of data analysis behind the team, to be able to be professional and to be able to make recommendations that will help the players at the end of the day. And so this is just on a footballing sense. It's important that we push that more and that we, on the first hand, I met some of the students from the Wittenberg College that are doing some of these sports science and sports management courses. We need to be able to give them a chance so they can learn and they can learn a trade. And it's not one of those things where you can just come in because you're someone's brother or cousin and you're not that competent and you're able to push through. I know this happens less so in Ghana, but in other countries it's something that is quite rampant, which is a problem in of itself. I think that talent is important, but more than talent, how hard you work is very important. And it's the little details. So, for example, I used to work at a football academy when I was in Ghana. I worked there for close to 3 years. One of the things as the head of operations that I did with under the leadership of the CEO was bring in a chef to change the kind of nutrition that our kids were eating, because if they're not eating correctly, if they're not taught about nutrition at a young age, when they eventually break through and maybe go to another country, Europe or wherever they end up, they need to be able to be adaptable to the kinds of food that they'll be able to find when they go there, and to still be able to compete at the highest level with the kinds of food that they'll be able to meet there as well. And things like the importance of hydration, that's something that we also need to talk about more. Nutrition and also resting. You know, you look at some documentaries. So I think it's about 10 years ago, Cristiano Ronaldo released a documentary on himself. And all the guy does is he trains, he sleeps, he stretches, and he hangs out with his family. And that's how he's able to perform at the top level. So it's time that some of our players, the local players who are aspiring to go to Europe and make it big over there, they also look at the details. What are you doing at the end of the day? Are you stretching? Are you also warming up correctly? If you have an injury, are you sure to see the right kinds of physiotherapists? You know, you have to take care of your body, because that's basically your tool to be able to perform at the highest level in any of the sports that you end up doing.
I promise you, we could go on and on and on and on and on, because this is an intriguing conversation. John, in a minute or less, where do you see sports? Where do you see sports grow in this country? I'm not talking about just football. I'm looking at hockey. I'm looking at cricket. I'm looking at table tennis. I'm looking at rowing. I'm looking at canoeing. I'm looking at archery. You know, in the next foreseeable future, where do you see the sports, all these sports and activities developing into, considering the fact that data is now the backbone of every sporting discipline?
So I think it's first starts with us recognizing that sports is business, and sports is actually very, very big business. If you look at some of the more recent transfers in football to Saudi Arabia, like we mentioned earlier, or even to the MLS, you know, at the end of the day, it's big business, and we should be able to also bring some of that big business home here in Ghana. I was talking to Jared Harrington, who is a BAL player, which is the NBA in Africa, and he was talking about his dream and his project of opening a sporting facility in Accra. So we need more people like that to be able to bring business to Accra, to also develop our players at the grassroots level. You know, I saw recently that the NFL came to Ghana. There's a lot of of interest in Ghana, especially with the emergence of the year of return. There's really a spotlight in Ghana. So there's a lot of opportunities that there are in Ghana. How do we seize these opportunities and make sure that we also realize that sports is business? So we need to also be professional. We also need to embrace it with both hands and run with it, the opportunity.
I think this has been a masterclass for me. I don't know about you, but I've really learned a lot from my interactions with Jon. Jon, finally, before we go, just give me a bit more background as to where did you go to school? Did you go to school? Did you do high school in Ghana? Because did you go to high school in Ghana?
So I didn't go to high school in Ghana. This is a question that people keep asking me. I didn't go to high school in Ghana, but I have a special place in my heart for Accra Academy because my dad graduated from Accra Academy, and my dad is one of my biggest inspirations. So my father used to work for the UN. He's now retired, but he used to work for UNESCO, and so that led us to live in various places, including France, and that's where I started my rowing career in a sense. But yeah, maybe I'll send my children eventually when I have, so they can grow up here and they'll hang out with you as well, Bernard.
And they don't have to go to Accra Academy. I'm serious. Don't go to Accra Academy. Anyway, that's just by the way. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Jon Boafo, a former rower. I mean, I don't see him as former because he's still as fit as a fiddle. Give him whatever thing, and I'm pretty sure he'll be able to compete at the highest level. He looks athletic. Give him a football, I bet he can actually kick, score, and maybe perform higher than Asamoah Gyan.
I doubt it, please. No. Asamoah Gyan is a legend. I'm not at that level at all. Some people have seen me play football. I stay in the back, I tackle, and I do short 5-meter passes. That's all I do. I'm not that good of a footballer, but so please don't put me in the same sentence as Asamoah Gyan.
All right, so this has been a Citi Sports interview with myself, Bernard Osei, and we spoke to Jon Boafo, a former rower. He's a traveler. Trust me, he's a traveler, a sports business person, has deep insights as to how you can penetrate every market on the African continent. For Citi Sports, my name is Bernard Osei once again.